continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. And Amy, I hate to ambush you, but
yeah,
we're bringing John Stossel on the show to do an intervention. We're going to try to deprogram you and rescue you from the recycling cult.
I know, it's so bad. I tried not to recycle, but I couldn't help it. At least I've stopped taking the labels off wine bottles.
Well, the first step is to admit that you have a problem. John Stossel, and by the way, in this video that Stossel did, which
I
is
watched it.
Excellent, Stossel features our friend John Tierney from the Manhattan Institute, who used to be a science columnist for the New York Times until actually pursuing the science was verboten at the New York Times. They got into the business of political agitprop. Here's a little snippet from John Stossel's report on recycling.
I've heard about how important it is to recycle.
It's not.
Science writer John Tierney debunked recycling claims years ago. His New York Times Magazine story, Recycling is Garbage, set a record for Times hate mail. And yet, what you said is still true?
It's even more true today. In fact, the economics have just gotten worse.
Now, my city would save more than $300 million a year if it just stopped recycling.
Recycling is an industry that's using increasingly expensive labor to produce materials that are worth less and less.
Because it's not worth recycling here, much is shipped overseas to countries like Malaysia, where it's just piled up.
A vast field of plastic 2 stories high.
Some of it from America.
See if we can look on the back here. Marysville, Ohio. Look, Walmart bag.
They just dump here and then they burn it.
That pollutes even more. And what they don't burn, they sometimes dump in the ocean.
One garbage truck of plastic is dumped in the sea every minute.
Barely any of that plastic comes from American shores. So,
if you care about saving Flipper, you should put your plastic bottle in the garbage.
For more on this, John Stossel, host and creator of Stossel TV. He releases a new video every Tuesday that is available at johnstossel.com. John, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Morning, Dan.
Well, this is good stuff because, of course, we need to ban plastic and we need to recycle because of a straw in a tortoise's nose, because of we want to save Flipper, as you just heard John Tierney comment on. And much of this, including because you talk directly to people in the recycling industry, much of this turns out not to be true.
I didn't hear the last part. Much of this what?
Turns out not to be true, what we've been told about recycling.
Yes. I mean, it's not to say that recycling is always stupid, and aluminum is practical and good for the environment to recycle, and paper if it's sorted. But much of it is just bunk. And my video really mixed 2 things, the American hysteria about it and the straw in the turtle's nose, which is mostly overseas. And Tierney's point is that if you put it in the garbage here, it goes to a landfill, it stays in America and doesn't end up in the turtle's nose. It's this phony pressure to recycle, and the companies that pretend to recycle and then don't because it's impractical, that do more harm to the environment than good.
But we can't. We have to recycle, John, because we're running out of landfill space. I'm told.
That's where it began, and it's just so silly because we have plenty of landfill space in America. You could take all America's garbage, and it would fit on Ted Turner's ranch in Montana, just one portion of it. And landfills these days are very safe. They turn them into ski mountains and golf courses after a while. They contain the garbage. And recycling uses lots of energy. if you use hot water to rinse out the bottle because your city asks you to do that, you're doing more harm to the environment from the heat you're using to heat that water. So a lot of this is nonsense. What I find funny is this, as you release a video every week. This one's 2 years old, but because Elon Musk retweeted it last week, it suddenly comes into the news cycle.
Well, what about recycling, aluminum cans or beer bottles, wine bottles, glass jars? Is that just, we shouldn't be doing that? We should just throw it straight in the garbage?
No, aluminum cans make sense, and where people will take them, do that. Glass bottles sometimes make sense, but glass is heavier. And then you have to compare it to all the trucks. Like Los Angeles started demanding more recycling. They bought 400 new garbage trucks to carry the separate things. So that probably added to environmental damage.
I'm sure they're all EV trucks, though.
Glass makes sense if there's a recycling plant nearby.
Well, and so the candor you got from the individual you spoke to in the one recycling center for your report. The problem is, though, you have all of these municipal recycling programs, and so those that are in the recycling industry, I mean, it's statements adverse to their interests to expose the silliness of so much of these recycling programs, isn't it?
Very much so. And once you have a government program, as I fear Elon Musk will run into, it's very hard to get rid of it because you have that constituency.
Right, and so at the municipal level, because I mean, to your point, your video's 2 years old. John Tierney's wrote about this decades ago in the New York Times. Reason Magazine has written about recycling programs too at the municipal level, making the point that I just made about sort of the moral hazard. Recycling businesses know more than they're going to disclose because there's money to be made. I mean, it's very hard to unwind it all other than for people to understand what the truth is and modify their behavior accordingly.
And people don't understand the truth. If a responsible city wanted to get rid of some of its program, except for, say, paper and aluminum, the voters would scream, and the politicians would run back into their holes.
Oh, I was going to ask you, just moving on, this week, ABC has agreed to pay $15 million to settle that defamation suit brought by Trump. I know you worked at ABC 2020 for years. What did you think of this settlement agreement?
I was surprised. I
Really?
don't know what their motives were. I mean, he did say, he was convicted of rape instead of sexual assault, which doesn't seem like a $15 million mistake, except that they kept repeating it and wouldn't apologize and wouldn't take it back. I mean, the culture at ABC when I worked there was that I was this weirdo conservative. And Peter Jennings, when he saw me in the hall, would turn his head away like I was embarrassed.
Really?
It was, everyone in the building was neutral except Stossel, who had this libertarian point of view, and that was damaging our reputation. I hung in there 28 years of having to explain to the lawyers who wanted to censor my story, saying rent control wrecked cities, which every economist agrees about. But they at least let me put some of it on the air until they finally fired me during the Obama administration.
What stories never made it on the air?
What never made it on the air?
Which stories or investigative pieces did you do that never saw the day of light?
One by an interview with Charles Murray about IQ differences. It's really the only one that was just totally killed. Mostly they just watered them down or required a counter statement from the government officials or the leftist activists. But to ABC's credit, on 2020, they let me put these contrarian things on.
And so did you get the Amish shun from Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters when you were in studio too? They turned their backs to you as you're as you're doing your reports?
No, Hugh Downs was very open to these ideas, and Barbara just cared about herself.
Oh boy!
Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
No, it does not. No, it does not. Could John Stossel? I mean, this seems like an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Could John Stossel be hired by any of the legacy media outlets today if he wanted to be?
I doubt it. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be.
No, I understand that, but I mean, yeah.
Thank God for social media that I can reach people. My son was the one who got me to make the switch. Hey, Dad, you don't need a network anymore. You got 1 million Twitter followers and 1 million Facebook followers. But they aren't even calling to have me on as a guest like you just did.
Mm-hmm. And
what are you working on right now?
Boy, I'm working on a guy who says the answer is more guns, not fewer guns. A guy named Maj Touré, who runs an organization called Black Guns Matter.
Philadelphia.
Very good. You're on top of things.
Yeah, we've had him on the show before.
And other things that I'm not going to mention until I release them.
And they'll be released via Twitter and Facebook?
Amy, I'm sorry.
Oh, I said, will they? Is it all going to be released via Twitter and Facebook?
And TikTok and Instagram and interesting, YouTube is the most reliable. When you talk about these hits, this got 8 million views. It's probably not views because Twitter and Instagram and TikTok consider it a hit if you just scroll by. YouTube only counts it after 30 seconds. And people who watch 30 seconds of my videos tend to watch the whole 5 minutes. So I rely mostly on YouTube, but we use all these outlets. And when Elon Musk retweets something, it suddenly goes from 1 million hits to 7 million.
Right, you got to stay in his good graces, absolutely.
I'm seeing 54.9 million right now, actually, John, just so you know.
I'm curious, John, your perspective on the future of legacy media. Do you think about this all in terms of the changing media landscape? Obviously, you're capitalizing on the social media aspect of it, and as are other former real investigative reporters like Cheryl Atkinson and Catherine Herridge. And I just wonder if you have any sort of perspective on where you think this is going.
I assume they will continue to disintegrate, and many of the Fox viewers are old if they're not already dead and just left the TV on. But this has bad parts too, because the algorithm is nasty. It's what's getting kids hooked. And if you've got crazy ideas, very quickly the algorithm will feed you more of that, and you will become angrier and crazier over time. I mean, I think we'll solve these problems. So when they first put radios in cars, people said, you can't do that. People will crash fiddling with the radio. And now you've got complicated stereo systems in cars, and somehow people handle it. But the legacy media is losing viewers all the time.
John Stossel, host and creator of Stossel TV, releases a new video every Tuesday. It's available at johnstossel.com and, of course, on all the social media platforms, as he mentioned. John, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you, Dan. Amy, bye.
Hi, thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Hi, I'm Ken Mariotti, owner of Woodland Windows and Doors, a third-generation family-owned business since 1969.